with the whole phenomenon. 71, we started seeing, this the violence, or not really the violence at that time, but at least people started talking about, like employing violent means. It started there at that time. But with the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, all those sort of people, or groups, who were sort of thinking in terms of kind of engaging in jihad directly, they got an opportunity. That was Bhutto's time, actually, essentially. Bhutto government at that time, when the Soor revolution came, and the first Afghans arrived here, and there was a reaction. Once again, the reaction was against, of course, bifurcation of Pakistan in 1971, and then the communist takeover. And the communist takeover in Afghanistan, there was a lot of tension between Pakistan and Afghanistan, especially the Pashtunistan issue, their land issue, and all that. There was huge propaganda, and the Afghan government, the Afghan agencies were involved in a lot of terrorism in Pakistan at that time. That was in early 70s. So there was a reaction. A secular man like Bhutto also thought that you have to teach lesson to the Afghan government, because they did that for 30 years. They were involved with the uprising in Balochistan in 50s, then uprising in Pajawar, then in Fatah, creating trouble in Fatah. So that was kind of and then huge propaganda, Radio Afghanistan, and a lot of publications. And some nationalists, they were posted by Kabul. They were staying in Jalalabad and Kabul, and the reaction was, you have to do something about it. You have to hurt. You have to hurt Afghanistan, Afghan government, so that they should back up from this. And in that, a process started. Dawood made overtures then to Pakistan at that time, because he had some issues with the Soviet leaders at that time. It was before the Soor revolution. I mean, before the Soviets came, after the Soor revolution, but before the Soviets came. He made some overtures to Pakistan, to Iran, even to US at that time. And with that, the hostility went down very briefly. But then the Soviet troops arrived in Afghanistan, and then a wave of refugees. By that time, the structures were already there. The infrastructure was already there. The infrastructure of Islamic resistance in Afghanistan was already in place in Pakistan, which was not very active. But Hikmatyar was here, Rabbani was here, Masood was here. All these people were here before the Soviets came, and all of them came here during Bhutto's time. Right? And then when the Soviets came, then Ziaullah needed legitimacy, international sort of context, and he decided to support the resistance in Afghanistan. But the thing started actually much earlier. It started probably 10 years before that, when we saw the actual manifestations. The madrasa issue was already there. The new madrasas were springing up even before the Soviets came here. The speed increased, of course, with the Soviet invasion. Then with the Iranian revolution, Khomeini's revolution in Iran, there was a reaction against that also, and there was a reaction here in Pakistan. That also contributed. So it's actually, that's the beginning. That's the genesis. It started, the way it started. Then things kept on adding to that. The things kept on adding. It was not only Afghanistan. After Soviet withdrawal, Kashmir was included in that, and then it expanded further. We had the sectarian issue simmering under the surface, not very visible, but it came up then. It also started in the 70s. Before 70s, we didn't have these issues. It took different forms. For example, it surfaced in full force in South Punjab, and in South Punjab, it was essentially a class struggle. All the big landlords were Shia and the Shi, and the farmers were Sunnis, and dispossessed, So the sectarian organizations worked very hard there rally the support from the. So it was essentially a class struggle. It was against the big landlords, the farmers revolting against the big landlords. So in South Punjab, that sort of that provided a platform. The class struggle provided a platform. In Peshawar, we never had a problem, Shia Sunni problem. There were huge intermarriages because they're living in a very little space in Peshawar. The Sunni Shias living together, intermarriages, and but what happened is when in Fatah, in Kurum Agency, where there was a tribal fight going on, right, between Dawars and Bangash and all that, the tribal fight converted into a sectarian fight, and that affected Peshawar because there were a lot of Bangash Shias, right, or Sunnis from Fatah, living in Peshawar. So it converted into again, into. So there are different causes of different things. In Balochistan, there was hardly any Shia population other than the Hazaras, and Hazaras are essentially new immigrants from Afghanistan. So what happened is since they had a lot of interaction with Iran, the informal trade, a lot of Hazaras are involved in that. There was a resistance to that, and mostly people from South Punjab went there to resist Hazaras in Balochistan. You don't have local Sunni, although Jamiat Ulama Islam is a very strong organization. There's a Deobandi school of thought, but it was not the resistance to Hazaras there or aggression against Hazaras now. That didn't come from the local Sunnis, local Sunni Deobandis. These Deobandis from South Punjab went there, and they are settled down in areas like Mastoon and around Quetta and all those places, particularly en route from Iran to Quetta. So you can see this violence. It came in different forms, in different periods. In Kashmir, it was more like Salfis who went there to fight. Afghans joined them, especially Hizb Islami. People from Hizb Islami joined them. So it took another form. Kashmir is essentially, they don't have very strong Salfi sort of groups there. Not even strong Deobandi. The strongest tradition there is this mystic Islam, Sufi Islam there in Kashmir. So that was another issue, and it became a little more complex because in Kashmir, Indian held Kashmir, there are areas which are populated by Shias, totally Shias. So they got alienated in the process. Initially, they were very strong with for freedom of Kashmir and all that, and Iran openly supported them. Actually, some of the Iranian statements on Kashmir were stronger than the statements of Pakistan Foreign Office. They issued even very strong statements. But when they saw that a lot of Salfis are going, some Deobandis, but a lot of Salfis are going, fighting there and committed atrocities against Shias there, then the Shias were alienated. So it's in different areas you see these different phenomena, which because state was weak, the society in general ignored these things because they thought that these things will go away. They thought that probably there's something normal happening and it will be okay. There will be no problem. The violent organizations became very strong. So that's actually to me that's the background. In the process, what happens is the religious parties in Pakistan could not make any headway in mainstream politics. Jamaat Islami never got more than 5-6 seats. Probably once only they got 8 or 9. Now only 4 to 5 seats. Despite very good organization, and a huge network and a good middle class associated with them, but they could do that. Jamiat Ulama Islam, they went up to 15-16 seats, but then they had this the barrier. They couldn't go out of their traditional constituencies in south of Pakhtunkhwa and Pashtun areas of Balochistan. They couldn't go out of they couldn't win seats really in Balochistan or other rest of the Balochistan, rest of Pakhtunkhwa, other than once, when the Americans came to Afghanistan, then they got seats in Jaisata and Swabi, but normally they won't get seats there. Punjab, they didn't get any seats, although they have a huge network of madrasas, probably 10,000 madrasas in Punjab, but still they couldn't get any seats. So what happens is, people associated with them, since the political parties who could not show any performance in the electoral politics.
Yeah.
So the workers got very disappointed.
Yeah.
So therefore you can see, like people from Jamiat Ulama Islam, from Jamaat Islami joining these extremist organizations. Like a lot of people from Jamaat Islami, some of them very good actually, intellectually very good. Most of them are killed now in drone strikes and all that now. But they were very good actually, very well educated with PhDs, FRCS or engineering degrees, and they went to Waziristan, migrated to Waziristan to the Islamic State, and but that was because they got disillusioned from the electoral politics because these parties could not perform well. The situation would have been different if, for example, Jamaat Islami got 4 seats in 1970 election, and if they could have got say 10 seats in 1989, and today if they had 20-25 seats in the parliament, their people would not have, because you have to give something to your workers in terms of some satisfaction that you are making progress. Right? But Jamaat Islami had 4 seats in 70 and 4 seats now in 2015 in the parliament. So naturally, and it's a very motivated membership. Jamaat has a very motivated membership, and so people then went astray, and all these issues were created. Even some of the leadership of these parties, they really lost the sort of the interest in the mainstream politics. So that's how it emerged, to me. And this is how the religious parties, actually the religious parties today are weaker than they were in, maybe they have few more seats now because of because of their, they are very, they adapt to sort of in the electoral politics now. But actually they are weaker in the society now. They're weaker in the society. A lot of their appeal, they have lost a lot of their appeal. Instead of that, this violent organizations, sectarian organizations, Taliban, Al Qaeda, they have more appeal to sections of society, in the religious population. So this is how, this is how I view it.
That's fascinating. I mean, there's areas within there that I didn't make a connection. So that background context has been absolutely brilliant. So I appreciate that. Thank you. My focus is primarily on the faith motivation. I'm not interested in the application. I think that if the motivator can be identified, then the application becomes indifferent. So if it's a Shia attacking a Sunni, or a Sunni attacking a Shia, or if it's Al Qaeda, or if it's Taliban, the end result is indifferent, the way that I see it. What causes that individual, the theology that causes that individual to take that step in order to achieve that goal is what I'm interested in. Because if we can identify at that point here, then we save ourselves all that heartache. And inshallah we'll try to avert these atrocities from happening. So the theology is what I'm interested in. And you mentioned that political disillusionment and several other factors led to people becoming affiliated with extremist groups. But what, in your opinion, what do you feel the motivations are for these extremist groups like Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan more recently, and before that, any other mainstream group, or let's say mainstream popular extremist group?
Well,
What do you feel that the motivations
are? The basic ideology is the same actually, all these groups. That is Ghazwa Hind, they think that, they are preparing for Ghazwa Hind. You know the background, what is Ghazwa Hind? And you know the Ghazwa Hind, the concept.
No, sorry.
The Ghazwa Hind is, the Prophet is quoted as saying that, before the day of judgment, there will be a, fight for Hind,
Okay.
Muslims will take over Hind, and in that fight I will participate myself. Therefore, it's called Ghazwa. Ghazwa is a jihad where the Prophet participates himself, like Ghazwa Ahad, Ghazwa Khandak, Ghazwa Badr. So, Ghazwa will, that's the fight, that will be the final fight. So that's, essentially that, the motivation is that, essentially motivation is that. And therefore, you will see the names like Khorasan always, because the historic term is Khorasan for Afghanistan, Pakistan. This area, this is Khorasan historically, right? Or parts of Iran, Central Asia, it's called Khorasan. Khorasan was actually subsequently a province of the Persian Empire, and these are the areas added into that. So that's the ideological motivation. Is that that's the ideological motivation. But very few people understand that concept because most of these people in TTP, even their leaders, are not literate, not even went to a madrasa or anything. So they don't understand this. But there are more kind of worldly interests. Some of them are there for money. Others are involved in drug trafficking, kidnapping for ransom, a lot of criminal activity going on. So initially, when TTP was established, and people did not take it very seriously. I remember meeting very senior people would say that, well, they are Chersi Taliban. They are Afghan Taliban and Chersi Taliban. They will call TTP Chersi Taliban. You know what is Chersi? Because most of them would take, would smoke hash, and they were in drug trade and all that. So they are called Chersi Taliban. But then it spread. The timber mafia joined them, the marble mafia joined them, the mineral mafia joined them. The car snatching mafia joined them, the ransom mafia joined them, and now it became a formidable force actually because of that. So now it's very interesting. Even very sort of senior leaders of Taliban are still involved in kidnapping for ransom, for car snatching, in drugs, with timber mafia, in smuggling, and drug trafficking. They're still, although people who understand, who understand the ideological basis of their movement, even they are involved in all kind of criminal activities still.
Yeah.
And that's very interesting.
I can understand that, because if they perceive the Pakistani state to be Darul Harb, then according to the jihadi legislation, in accordance with their understanding, in Darul Harb, that activity is permissible. Because if their Jan, Mal, and Izzat is not ma'soom, then you can take whatever you want to do. Whatever you want.
That's the philosophy. That's the philosophy. So but it's essentially, and because of that, you see a lot of criminals there. People in Bara area or from Waziristan area or Sakakot area, where you have Taliban concentration now. All the criminals now are with Taliban. They grew huge beards. They changed their appearance, but they are doing exactly what they were doing 20 years ago, 30 years ago. All these trouble spots like Bara, like near Peshawar, Badabir area, these are always, infested by criminals. Now they are Taliban controlled areas because all these people became Taliban. The only thing is now, before they didn't have beards, now they have long beards. So that's that's actually what happened in Waziristan also. It's just roughly the same phenomenon.
And do you have any insight into the narrative that they espouse? What is it that they say? Is there a seemingly common message that comes from such organisations?
The message is, they talk about Sharia, imposition of Sharia. That's the common message. Although they, if you talk to them, and I've talked to a number of the senior people, been sort of in touch with them and discuss it with them, they really don't understand what Sharia actually means. It's more like tribal tradition, Pashtun tradition in some places, or very narrow, definition. The broadest definition would be sectarian, not beyond that. When they talk about Sharia, they are talking about, Devbandi, school of thought. They won't go beyond that. So, they have very little understanding of it, but Sharia is yes. They support, for example, a Jargah system. But they don't understand, how would it fit into Sharia, how, or collective responsibility, for example. But how does it relate to Sharia? They in these fine points, in these niceties, they don't get into that. They do not have the training, education, or proclivity to get into that. They're very broad brush. Just Sharia. Just Sharia. So it's yeah, that's the actually the common that's the common issue. But what's happening is uh, amongst themselves there are a lot of differences, and those differences are because who is making more money. If Masouds are making more money, then Wazir Taliban are against them because Masouds can have can snatch more people for kidnap more people for ransom, right? Or can traffic more drugs than Wazirs. So if Wazirs are better off, then Masouds are against them. If Orakzai or in Tira, and there's several groups, and they're quite autonomous actually. They're quite autonomous. They have a shura, yes, but they're quite autonomous, and they're quite autonomous because it depends who has more wealth, and anybody who has more money, more wealth, would have a bigger say in the shura because they can buy support. So, but the phenomenon is ideologically, they are same like Afghan Taliban because they also say that Mullah Omar is Amirul Mu'mineen for them.
Okay.
Yeah, if you see TTP letterheads, it says that Amirul Mu'mineen Mullah Muhammad Umar Akhund on one side, and on the other side it would say that Amir Tahrik Taliban Pakistan Mullah whosoever is then yeah, like if was Betullah before, then Hakimullah, now Fazlullah, Mullah Fazlullah on the other side. But it's a Mullah Umar's letter they are using, his name on the letter they are using. So yeah, so that's that they have this link, they're very strong link, and they have taken oath of allegiance back, with Mullah Umar, all of them, in absentia, they have taken this oath, they are loyal to Mullah Umar. This is what they say, and this is what gives them legitimacy in their system. Even Osama bin Laden took oath of allegiance with Mullah Umar. So Mullah Umar was Amir, not Osama, not Shah Osama.
And Mullah Umar was a student of Mullah Samir Haq.
Yes.
Mullah Samir Haq's father, I think it was. Was it?
Samulak is lying on that score. He never came to Akola. He studied in a madrasa in Quetta. He never studied there. But I don't know. Samulak says that.
Yeah, I mean,
but Mullah Omar says that he never went to. He visited probably, yes, but Mullah Omar says that no, he was never.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I think Samulak visited Kandahar only once in 5 years when Taliban government was there. And what I heard from the Taliban inside was cold shoulder. But a lot of people take credit, for take credit for Mullah Omar and all that. Now, Mullah Omar went to a madrasa in Quetta, in a small madrasa in Quetta, But maybe I don't know. Maybe he came for Dora Hadith or something.
Possibly, yeah. Possibly a study done today. And this is slightly veering off the subject. But in respect of Mullah Omar, what's the view, whether it be your personal view or the Pakistani government's view on him? Because he was supported for a point during that Cold War period by the CIA and the ISI, but then there seems to be a period of a dissolvement in that relationship. So I mean, how is he viewed?
Nobody has met Mullah Omar since 2002, so we don't know. We really don't know. Like I will tell you, so personally, I met a lot of Taliban. At least spoke to a lot of Taliban leaders, on phone or something, or through letters and all that. Nobody has seen Mullah Omar. The defective leader of Taliban, who was arrested in 2010, and he was like, running the Taliban. He also had not met Mullah Omar after 2002. Last time he met him, and arrested in 2010. Yes. And 2002 he met last time. So similarly, Mullah Zakir or others, Tayyib Agha, nobody can claim that they met him after 2002. So we really don't know what happened to Mullah Omar or where he is. Actually, now that is being used in Afghanistan. Some Afghan Taliban circles being is you know it's used as an argument that since Mullah Omar, nobody has seen him for the last 12 years, right? So he cannot be a Amirul Mu'minin, and therefore some people in Afghanistan and in tribal areas, who are contacted by Daesh, they say that well, Abu Bakr Bukhari could be the Amirul Mu'minin because nobody has seen Amirul Mu'minin. Because according to Sharia, even a marriage dissolves after 7 years if the husband disappears for more than 7 years. So here, you have a situation where Amirul Mu'minin has disappeared 12 years ago. Nobody has seen him. Nobody has seen him. Nobody has heard his voice. No, he has not spoken to anybody. They are just messages. Emissary is bringing messages. And no emissary can claim that they have met him. They have met somebody else who brought Mullah Omar's message. There's no direct emissary. So we tried messaging with him, and honestly, I am not very sure. Actually, personally, I'm very doubtful. Karzai had another explanation. He said that, well, 2002, ISI arrested him, kept him. He's with ISI, so nobody can meet him. And they are using him. They are using him. But that's far-fetched. 12 years you can't keep Mullah.
Wow.
Yeah, and then we have all these intelligence reports. The chatter has died down. The chatter is in Karachi now, Sher Shah, is in Quetta, in Pashtunabad or something. But all that, when we investigate it, is normally more like propaganda than actually solid intelligence information. Because somebody says that. Like his son-in-law used to bring messages. And when he was grilled, with this Qatar process, and it's very interesting. He said that, well, he was asked repeatedly, did you meet him? Did he give you a message himself? And no, somebody brought a message. But he said that, well, at such and such time, you came back within 24 hours and brought a message. How that's possible if there are intermediaries between you, his son-in-law, and Umar Akhund, Mullah Umar Akhund, how it's possible? He said that, well, he came in my dream and he told me this. So that's that's a bit. So this is the kind of uncertainty around Mullah Umar.
So
like in case of Osama bin Laden, videos would come out where he would speak, his messages, his writings. He wrote a book also, and he was in touch with people. Although people who were arrested, the last person was Sheikh Ahmad Khalid, who said that he met Mullah Omar. Osama bin Laden. But that's sort of the person who was arrested. People who were arrested before him, all of them had met Mullah Omar. Osama bin Laden. But then Osama bin Laden, you could see the fingerprints. You could see, he was active, he was involved, he was sending messages, he was writing letters. There were people around him who were being watched. In case of Mullah Omar, like either CIA or ISI or Afghan intelligence or MI6 or anybody, nobody has pinpointed, well, this is a place we need to. A few years ago, I was reading some intelligence, report on intelligence cooperation between US and Pakistan, a very sensitive report. And by that time, there were 64 joint operations between CIA and ISI in Quetta. And none of those were directed against Mullah Omar to find his location.
That's interesting.
Yes, So essentially, like CIA, ISI, everybody probably knew that, well, Mullah Omar is probably not there. If he were there, out of 64, at least there should be 1 or 2 operations to find Mullah Omar. Nobody tried to find Mullah Omar. Nobody even tried to find him. So you can see, the information we see in the media is not very credible actually. This is my impression. I could be totally wrong. I could be totally wrong. But speaking to their top people, and
No, I mean, I completely support that. I think that if 64 operations.
And I told this to Karzai, 2 years ago, and I said that, well, after dealing with this issue with Afghanistan and issue of terrorism and Pakistani Taliban for a very long time, I probably amongst the serving civil servants, nobody has dealt with this issue more than I did. You know, civil servants in army, yes, there's still people, retired people who are still working in retired capacity, but on contract. But I think in serving civil servant, I think I've dealt with this the longest. And this is I told Kaza actually, and I said that my conclusion is we cannot locate Mullah. There's no way. Even when we say that, well, we have sent your message to him and we got a response from him, I'm not sure if actually this response came from him. And on this he said that, well, I know that, and he said that, well, I'll tell you, I think that he had been arrested.
Yeah.
And he's with ISI or with Pakistan government, and you are using him. This was his. But it's a more like knee-jerk reaction than an informed. So that is what he was guessing. That was it. Yes.
What's the popular opinion in relation to where he may be or what might happen to him?
We don't know. There are different locations. Sometimes it's Pashtunabad, Quetta, sometimes it's Helmand, sometimes it's Kandahar, sometimes it's Karachi, Shesha in Karachi. But but it's all neither CIA nor ISI nor MI6 nor Afghan intelligence. None of them could confirm that. This is they actually the Americans actually once thought that they have killed Mullah and they have killed a shopkeeper, a wrong person. Because there was his face was very similar, and he also had this patch on his eye. And somebody reported that it's Mullah Omar, and they went and they killed him. And then they found out, this he was a lookalike. It was not Mullah Omar. So, like he did not come to a single Shura meeting. Mullah Omar after 2002, the Rabbar Shura, what people very wrongly call Quetta Shura, which is a different thing. The Rabbar Shura, which Mullah Omar heads, notionally he heads that. He never came to a meeting since 2002, last 12 years.
Yeah, something's not right.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of dialogue around Bin Laden, who he is, where he's from, and how credible he is as an individual. He claimed to be the leader of this modern day jihad, but from one perspective, he's supported by the CIA, which is true.
Yeah, initially, yes.
And who was he actually as an individual? Nobody knows, and the judgment's still out. But the impact that he's had globally on Muslim, whether it's Muslim youth or the Muslim community towards Terrorism and this jihad, has been massive. But the problem that I have is that we don't know anything about Islam. We don't know, aside from what's in popular media, you don't know credible who he is and who he isn't. And it's the same, I suppose, for Mullah Omar. Is he an individual who, after 2002, has decided to retire from this public role that he's in, and align himself with the CIA or with the ISI or whatever else it may be, that had a vested interest in the Mujahideen at that time, and give this life up? I don't think you can just disappear for 12 years unless you're either dead or you've got an exit strategy.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. Very interesting. I suppose that is another line of research.
Yeah, it's another line of research. Mullah Omar is it's very different than Osama bin Laden or Zahiri. For example, Zahiri, you still get messages, you get his pictures, videos, and all that.
Yeah.
Although again, we don't know anybody who has met Zahiri in the last 3 years, for example.
Okay.
But Zahiri, seems very much alive and kicking. But Mullah Omar, you don't see. You don't see any evidence of that. Yeah.
You mentioned something which was interesting to me, and it's a movement that's taking a lot of Europe by storm, and that's the Daesh movement. How influential is that at the moment?
We know for sure they have tried to contact people here in Pakistan. Some of their representatives have visited and met people here. Afghanistan also, and here also they are in touch with people. I think their conclusion is, they think that this could be a good recruiting ground. a good recruiting ground for them. Because Al Qaeda is under pressure, TTP is under pressure, Afghan Taliban are under pressure, and their foot soldiers, are gradually becoming leaderless. So it's a good, it's a good, from their perspective, it's a good recruitment ground. And then again, we have very strong amongst these, jihadi element. We have very strong sectarian bias, extremely strong sectarian bias. That works very well for Daesh because they're also very strong sectarian. So that's their advantage. There are two disadvantages. One disadvantage is that they are, Salafi school of thought. We don't have Salafi school of thought that strong here. Even in sectarian organization or even in jihadi organization, they are there. But similarly, Afghan Taliban also are not Salafis. They are Deobandis essentially. So you see that difference, and that difference does not seem very big from outside because Deobandis and Salafis are very close in their traditions and practices and all that. But actually, if you are Deobandi, actually, then you can see that they're quite different, quite apart. So that's like one disadvantage. The second disadvantage is this area already have an Amir al-Mu'minin here. So that's kind of. But I see that a serious danger that Sipai Sahaba can join Daesh. Because the purpose of Sipai Sahaba is to kill Shias, to kill Al-Tashi. So it's, and then Daesh has a lot of money. Daesh now has more money than Al Qaeda or Taliban. So it's money game also at the same time. It's the resources. Yes.
And how effective have they been coming over from?
Not much. There was some graffiti on in different cities in Pakistan and all that, and some pamphlets. There some propaganda material. Propaganda material was distributed in Pakistan but not published in Pakistan. We got we traced it. It was published in Afghanistan, and because of that, it was in Pashto and Dari. And there's no point, distributing a pamphlet in Pashto and Dari even in Pakhtunkhwa, because the Pashto they write, in Afghanistan, in Pakhtunkhwa also we speak Pashto, yes, but we don't read Pashto, we don't write Pashto. That's Urdu is the language. So Pashto, even the Afghan refugees, it has appealed. Yes, they understand Pashto, and then Dari, it has a very limited audience. And interestingly, most of the Dari audience in Pakistan is Shia population, not Sunni population. So that's like you can see that it was done for Afghanistan but distributed here also. Maybe they distributed it more there. That's one. Secondly, people who were engaged in this graffiti and all that, most of them were arrested. But they are professionals, they do all kind of graffiti. You pay them, they'll do the graffiti. They do it on contract for political parties, for hakims, for the traditional medicine, for medicine for impotency. What is their profession? They have these small shops. You go there, you tell them, you have to do this 100 or 1,000 graffitis in the city. You pay them, they do it. You pay them, and that's it. So most of the people who are arrested were like this. They had nothing to do with Daesh or Taliban or any. And normally, since they simply just writing Daesh Zindabad, they think much of it. They don't understand this. They thought it was some political party or something, and they did it. So a lot of people were arrested, but they were that kind. So naturally, they were released. They are doing their work. Their labors.
And prior to the arrival or attempted arrival of Daesh here, there was a lot of influx of non-Pakistani nationals coming into Pakistan to join these movements.
Into Syria, yes.
In Syria, in Pakistan, across to Afghanistan as well. What do you feel caused that?
First, what happened is Al Qaeda started recruiting people for Syria. And Ustad Qahtani, he recruited people from Fatah as well as from the eastern provinces of Afghanistan. He recruited people for Syria. Right? Initially, it was Al Qaeda, but then what happens is when this contract was established, a lot of people went because of the way they went from, let's say, from Australia or from UK or from France and other places, they went there to fight. And I think the social media played a very big role in that. Social media played a very big role in spreading their message in the Taliban circles. But essentially, people who went from here were either sectarian organizations people affiliated with sectarian organization, or with TTP, or Afghan Taliban. They went there. They went there. A number of people went from Kunar, but they were Salfis. Kunar Salfis are very strong. Nuristan and Kunar. So they went there initially. But I don't think that a lot of people are going now. Shias also went, yeah. No, a lot of people are not going there.
So Shias went in support?
Shias also went there, yeah, in support of, the Iranians supported that, and Al Qaeda initially supported the other side, and then people went to fight along Daesh. But we see now that has receded, People who went there.
And is there still an influx of foreign fighters coming into Pakistan as well as going out?
There's still not much now. Yeah, but we still have Uyghurs coming from Xinjiang, from China. We have Uzbeks coming, Tajiks coming, Afghans coming. Yes, we have that. Yeah, we have that influx.
To come and fight in Pakistan, or come to
they fight in Pakistan. They fight in Pakistan also. Like Uzbeks mostly fight in Pakistan. But with Zarb Azab, since June, you see the graph is really going down. Really going down. Because the sanctuaries are dismantled, so they don't have a ready-made place to go at. They have now to look for a place also. So because of that, it's gone down. But Uyghurs and Uzbeks particularly have been coming, waves after waves. A lot of them got killed, a lot of them got arrested, but still more people would come. Yeah. And they take a very circuitous route. For example, the Uyghur from China, they would take a flight from Shanghai to, let's say, Laos, or Cambodia, then take a flight to another place and then come to, they come to Afghanistan or somewhere, and from there they will walk. Even some of them would come with genuine passports. They'll come to Islamabad airport and then disappear. But they'll not come directly from China because it's more difficult. But if they are going from Shanghai, they're flying from Shanghai to Cambodia or Laos. Nobody bothers. A Chinese tourist going there, a Uyghur going there, on a Chinese passport, no problem. But from there, then go to a third country, and then from Laos they can't come directly to Pakistan actually. So then go to a third country, stay there for some time, get training and facilities and all that, and then they land in Afghanistan or in Pakistan and Waziristan. So that was the route they followed.
And you've already touched upon it with Zarb Azab, but what is the strategy at the moment to try?
Zarb Azab is essentially focused on Waziristan, clearing up Waziristan, because Waziristan had become a big challenge. So Zarb Azab focus is Waziristan. It's not the overall de-radicalization. Those would be different strategies. So we have Khyber one for Khyber agency, Zarb Azab for North Waziristan, because they were the real problem areas, especially Waziristan, which has a huge international dimension.
I was talking to Shihab Azam, the deputy director for the FIA, and he was just telling me about some of the difficulties that they have in implementing strategies in places like Waziristan.
गाड़ी आ गई चेक करें ये सॉरी नसीर वाले मैंने निकलना है 1 o'clock.
And some of the difficulties that they have in terms of implementing the strategies that they have. How effective are the strategies that are put in place to, aside from the military strategy, are they non-conventional to try and rebuild areas, get people out of poverty, provide them with education? Is there any such?
We don't have overall national strategy. I mean, we have one, but really we still have issues with that, because it's in very initial stages. Like we were very successful in de-radicalization program in Swat, for example. rebuilding in Swat. You know, Swat was a success story, but say South Uzbekistan was not that big a success. Yes. हाँ हाँ तो उठा दीजिए हाँ हाँ उसको कर ले ऐसा रेडी हो जाए बताएं so that's kind of Waziristan was now naturally North Waziristan we will address South Waziristan also practically yeah so it depends on different areas sort of Karachi now is a very persistent continuous campaign in Karachi now going on for more than a year now and it's bringing very good results. Yeah, in Punjab is in a different style. In Punjab they are like it's a more police action, not publicized. Where they're building databases, they are interrogating people, they are arresting people. In Punjab is at a different level. Yeah, because Punjab is not sort of these people are not involved in violence locally. Yeah. Even if they are involved in violence, they would go to some other place and yeah. So because Punjab the writ is a little stronger, government writ is better naturally. So they are also a bit apprehensive doing something in Punjab is better.
I was speaking to Lieutenant General Javed Iqbal from the NDU, and he goes, Punjab's in denial about the problems that they have.
That's true.
That they have. Yeah. He goes, they're not really
Punjab is a deep problem. Punjab is in a deep problem. Yeah, there is one Joint Secretary, National Security Division, make a PhD on extremism, violent extremism in UK. Right. So anything else? Then we will be in touch, right?
Yeah, that'll be great.
Do you have any?
There were just a